Reading The Unknown Reality by Jane Roberts, a Seth book, Volume 2. Okay, so getting really close to the end of this book. We are in session 741. Okay, so there are a few notes, but I'm not going to read them. They're not pertinent. So, going right into dictation, Seth states, "The unknown reality appears to be invisible only because you do not accept it in your prime series of events. It is as if you had trained yourselves to respond to red lights and to ignore green ones, for example. Or as if you read only every third or fourth line on a page of a book. You attend to matters that seem to have practical value. Whether or not you understand what space is, you move through it easily. You do not calculate how many steps it takes you to cross a room, for instance. You do not need to understand the properties of space in scientific terms in order to use it very well. You can see yourselves operate in space, however. To that extent, it is a known quality apparent to the senses. Your practical locomotion is involved with it, so you recognize it. Its mysterious or less known properties scarcely concern you. Now, you move through probabilities in much the same way that you navigate in space, as you do not consciously bother with all of the calculations necessary in the process of walking down the street. So you also ignore the mechanisms that involve motion through probable realities. You manipulate through probabilities so smoothly, in fact, with such finesse, that you seldom catch yourself in the act of changing your course from one probability to another. Take a very simple action. You stand at a corner wondering which direction to take. There are 4 streets involved. You briefly consider streets 1 and 2, but rather quickly decide against them. You stand for a moment longer gazing down street 3, taking in the visual area. You are somewhat attracted and imagine yourself taking that course. Your imagination places you there momentarily. Inner data is immediately aroused through conscious and unconscious association. Perhaps you are aware of a few memories that dimly come to mind. One house might remind you of one a relative lived in years ago. A tree might be reminiscent of one that grew by your family home. But in that instant, inner computations occur as you consider making a fairly simple decision, and the immediate area is checked against all portions of your knowledge. You then look at street 4. The same process happens again. This area also takes your attention. At the same time, you almost equally hold in your mind the image of street 3, for you can see them both at once from this intersection. Let us say that you are almost equally attracted to both courses. You teeter between probabilities, having the full power to choose one street or the other as physical experience. If you had to stand there and write down all the thoughts and associations connected with each course of action before you made your decision, you might never cross the intersection to begin with. You might be hit by an automobile as you stood there, lost in your musings. In the same way, it would take you some time to even walk from a table to a chair if you had to be consciously aware of all of the nerves and muscles that must first be activated. But while you stand almost equally attracted by streets 3 and 4, then you send out mental and psychic energy in those directions. Past associations merge with present reality and form a pattern. Mentally, a part of you actually starts out upon each street, a projected mental image. As you stand there then, in this case, the two projected images go out onto streets 3 and 4. To some extent, these images experience, quote, what will happen, end quote. What will happen if you yourself take one direction or the other. That information is returned to you instantaneously, and you make your decisions accordingly. Say you choose Street 4. Physically, you begin to walk in that direction. Street 4 becomes your physical reality. You accept that experience in your prime sequence of events. You have, however, already sent out an energized mental image of yourself into Street 3, and you cannot withdraw that energy. The portion of you that was attracted to that route continues to travel it. At the point of decision, this alternate self made a different conclusion, that it experiences Street 3 as physical reality. The self, as you think of it, is literally reborn in each instant, following an infinite number of events from one official series of events that you recognize at any given quote-unquote time. There is something highly important here concerning your technological civilization. As your world becomes more complicated in those terms, you increase the number of probable actions practically available. The number of decisions multiplies. You can physically move from one place on the planet to another with relative ease. Centuries ago, ordinary people did not have the opportunity to travel from one country to another with such rapidity. As space becomes quote-unquote smaller, your probabilities grow in complexity. Your consciousness handles far more space data now. I am speaking in your terms of time. Watching television, you are aware of events that occur on the other side of the earth, so your consciousness necessarily becomes less parochial. As this has happened, the whole matter of probabilities has begun to assume a more practical cast. Civilizations are locked one into the other. Politicians try to predict what other governments will do. Ordinary people try to predict what their governments might do. More and more, you are beginning to deal with probabilities as you try to ascertain which of a number of probable events might physically occur. When the question of probabilities is a practical one, then scientists will give it more consideration. The entire subject is very important, however. As far as a true psychology is concerned, individuals who are made aware of existence of probable realities will no longer feel trapped by events. Your consciousness is at a point where it is beginning to understand the significance of, quote, predictive action, end quote. And predictive action always involves probabilities. In certain terms, you are the recognized quote-unquote result of all of the decisions you have made up to this point in your life. That is the official you. You are in no way diminished because other quite as official selves are quote-unquote offshoots of your own experience, making the choices you did not make and choosing then alternate versions of reality. You follow the prime series of events that you recognize as your own, yet all of you are connected. These are not just esoteric statements, but valid clues about the nature of your own behavior, meant to give you a sense of your own freedom and to emphasize the importance of your choice. Whenever you try to predict behavior or events, then, you are dealing with probabilities. However, it seems to you that all action in the past is fixed and done, while behavior in the future alone is open to change. So the word quote-unquote prediction assumes future action. Basically, the past is as open to change as the future is. When you are dealing with historic events, you believe that no prediction is involved. Personally, and as a species, you are convinced that there is a one-line series of finished events behind you. In the book, The Nature of Personal Reality, I stated that the point of action occurs in the present. In Jane's book, Adventures in Consciousness, Seth states, Rupert said quite properly that time experience actually splashed out from the present to form an apparent past and future. When you seemingly look backward into time and construct a history, you do so by projecting your own prime series of events into the past as it is understood. Obviously, you read the past from the present, but you also create it from the present as well. You accept certain data, your present recognized series of events, then use that series as a measuring stick, so to speak. It automatically rejects what does not fit. At certain levels of experience, this makes little difference. All data agree. No rough spots show. You build smooth structures of beliefs, then look at reality using the beliefs like glasses, tinted ones. Opposing information will literally be invisible to you. It will be ignored or cast aside. It has been fashionable to think in terms of straight line evolution, for example. As mentioned earlier in this book, the accepted theory of evolution is highly simplistic. Your species did not come from one particular source. You have many cousins, so to speak. Some traces of that lineage remain in your time. However, when you look quote-unquote backward at the planet, you actually try to predict past behavior from the standpoint of the present. You do this personally in your intimate lives to some degree also, as you view your earlier days. You blot out events that do not fit your present concept of yourself. They literally become non-existent as far as you are concerned. In such a fashion, you block out aspects of your own reality, and consciously at least cut down on your choices. The species as you know it has within it intrinsically many abilities and characteristics that go unrecognized because you do not accept them as a part of your biological or spiritual heritage. Therefore, they become latent and invisible, practically speaking. The same applies individually. When you deny yourselves the rich mixture of consciousness and experience that is available through a recognition of the manipulation of probable realities. You alter your experience in each instant quite drastically. Each individual possesses far vaster opportunities for choice than are realized. You are denied tomorrow's wisdom only because you believe time is a closed system. It is true that you are subject to birth and death, yet within that framework, far greater dimensions of experience are possible than are usually experienced. You are all counterparts of each other who are alive at any given Earth time. By really understanding this, you could come to terms with the ideas of brotherhood that religions have taught for so long. Alright, that's basically the end of this session. And there's just a couple of notes. So note number 7, as per when Seth stated the 4 streets, he was talking about the 4 streets and making a choice. Seeing a tree that is reminiscent of one that grew by your family home, where Seth said, quote, but in that instant, inner computations occur as you consider making a fairly simple decision, and the immediate area is checked against all portions of your knowledge, end quote. So that's what number 7 is in reference to, and if you want more information about that, Rob is saying that Seth gave 2 blocks of material in Seth Speaks that are analogous to what he tells us here. So see chapter 7, session 530, when Seth discoursed upon our frequent projection of, quote, replica images, or, quote unquote, pseudophysical forms to vividly desired locations. And also in the 565th session, same book, chapter 16, it's already been linked in video number 30 in this playlist, but Rob adds that Seth used the example of one's possible response to a telephone call to show how all, quote, probable actions are equally valid, end quote, no matter which one of them is physically actualized. If you want to jump to that video, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely will be worth it. And then note number 12, Rob states that for one of the ways in which Seth explicates the idea that we're blind to information or beliefs that we don't agree with, he's saying see session 617 for chapter 3 of The Nature of Personal Reality. And that is in reference to when Seth stated in this session, the opposing information will literally be invisible to you. So for more on that, you definitely want to go to that and see what that's all about if you haven't already read it or want to recap. Okay, so that is the end of this video. But the next video, my notes here say that it's going to have information on Atlantis, and mankind is entering into a new kind of dimension of selfhood, and also potentials of self uncovered. Let's see what Rob has to say about the next session, titled. Whoa, his is really dramatic. So, it states, the end of the world and probabilities, Atlantis, a new era for man. So anyways, that should be a really great session as well. Thank you for watching.